Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble!
Hold it, you're not that pretty. I'm a bad man. Wait. I shook up the world. I shook up the world.
I bear witness, there's only one God, Allah, and Muhammad is his final messenger. That's what I said, Larry, on the bungle fight. Thanking you.
They call me the problem, but you could call me the can man, because anybody can get it. Africans, Americans, Dominicans, Mexicans, anybody can get it.
How y'all doing, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to Split Decision, episode 70, in which tonight we're going to talk about the fight of the week, Errol Spence versus Danny Garcia, possibly the biggest fight this year, the most anticipated comeback of Errol Spence after surviving a car accident in a miracle way. There's so much been said on both sides. We're going to talk about that. Go ahead and call in to place your position to get your prediction across for this fight. That being said, let's get straight to it.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble!
Shout out to everybody in the chat. Davis, Jones. Shout out to all of my AKHis that's tuning in. Like I said, make sure you guys call in to place your prediction on this fight, because this is the most anticipated fight this year in the sport of boxing. Coming off a hell of a week in which Mike Tyson made a legendary comeback. With that being said, we're going to go ahead and start it off with round one by giving you guys breaking news of Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones pay-per-view sales. They projected to do between 1.1 to 1.5 million, which those are great numbers, possibly the biggest numbers this year. I think the UFC, Masvidal versus Usman, that did 1.3 million. Conor McGregor versus Cowboy did 1.1 million, and then Habib did 700K. So if Mike Tyson does 1.5 million, like the pay-per-view is projected to do, then he definitely topped any sport this year, which those are great numbers. However, they did not live up to the hype of the pre-sales, because supposedly the pre-sales, like I informed you guys, it was reported that this fight, Mike Tyson versus Jones, Roy Jones, the pre-sales were supposedly the biggest numbers of the decade, the biggest pre-sales of the decade. So a lot of people felt like maybe this gonna top Floyd Mayweather versus Pacquiao, Floyd Mayweather versus Conor McGregor, which I told you guys, I don't see that being possible because it's still an exhibition. You know what I'm saying? I mean, even Mike Tyson versus Holyfield, Mike Tyson versus Lennox Lewis, it did like 1.8, 2 million pay-per-view buys. So it's a stretch for Mike Tyson today to top Floyd Mayweather versus Pacquiao that did 5.7 million on pay-per-view. Mike Tyson have to go up against like a current heavyweight to do them type of numbers. Even a Holyfield trilogy will do great, but it's very hard to top 5.7 million on pay-per-view. But nevertheless, it was a tremendous success, to say the least. So with that being said, obviously for the people that don't know, Floyd Mayweather holds the 4 highest pay-per-view sales of all time in any sport. Floyd Mayweather versus Pacquiao did 5.7 million on pay-per-view. Floyd Mayweather versus Conor McGregor did 5.1 million on pay-per-view. Oscar versus Floyd Mayweather did 2.7 million. And Floyd Mayweather versus Canelo did 2.2 million. So Floyd Mayweather holds the record for the top 3 in any sport. And it's going to be a long time to see someone top these kind of numbers. But nevertheless, Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones was a tremendous success. I mean, for 2 50-year-old fighters fighting each other, doing 1.5 million, that's shocking. That's mind-boggling. But obviously, the promotion that they got for that fight was extraordinary, with Mike Tyson just hitting the pad, and that did 2.5 billion impression alone. A 15-second video did that. That's the type of promotion money can't buy. Now, in my humble opinion, obviously, Errol Spence versus Danny Garcia is taking place this week. I think it would have been wise if they did this fight prior to the Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones. I'm be honest with you guys. I didn't like the idea of Errol Spence versus Danny Garcia being pushed back after Mike Tyson's versus Roy Jones, because that kind of overshadowed the Errol Spence fight. This fight was so hyped up. It's so anticipated. But the week before Errol Spence is about to fight, we got Mike Tyson freaking coming back. Think about it. I always tell people, you do not do pay-per-view back-to-back. That's an absolute no. Because there's already, we already in a pandemic, right? So if we in a pandemic and then Mike Tyson fights, so majority of the 1.5 million people that bought the pay-per-view have to be hardcore boxing fans, right? I'm one of them. So if I spend $50,000, if I spend $50 purchasing Mike Tyson fight, and then the week right after that, I gotta pay $80 to watch Errol Spence fight. I mean, I might have to, but not everybody is willing to do that. So I'm always, pushing of one pay-per-view a month. One pay-per-view a month, I feel like, yeah, that could be affordable to certain fan bases. You might not get every single fan base to purchase the pay-per-view, but one pay-per-view a month is doable. But to have pay-per-views back-to-back, especially a successful pay-per-view like Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones, and then to have Errol Spence right after, nearly double the cost, I think that wasn't a wise decision by the decision makers, because they had the right date. November, I think it was 23rd. That was the right date. A week right before the Mike Tyson fight. So the people that purchased the Errol Spence fight, they could think about purchasing the Mike Tyson fight. However, now, all the people that purchased the Mike Tyson fight, are they willing to spend more money for the Errol Spence fight? It's worth it. It's definitely going to be a fight, not an exhibition. But at the end of the day, I just don't think it was wise. I know they did it for the attendance. However, I don't know how hard would it have been for them to force the attendance and try to cook things and get things done on that same date they had prior. So, nevertheless, one way if they could have easily solved the issue I brought up, if they promoted Errol Spence versus Danny Garcia during Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones. That would have been a hell of an idea, to have Errol Spence versus Danny Garcia. Errol Spence come back after surviving in a miracle way right before Mike Tyson fights John Jones. Right after the kid, Logan Jack or something, right after his knockout. That would have been a brilliant idea. That's what they did to Canelo Alvarez when he fought Strickland. Remember, he got promoted on Floyd Mayweather versus Pacquiao card. That's why he did tremendous numbers on HBO the week after. And that fight wasn't on pay-per-view. So the fact that Errol Spence fight on pay-per-view, I think it would have been worth it to spend a couple dollars on an ad in order to push for the Errol Spence fight right after the Mike Tyson fight. But it is what it is. I think Errol Spence will still do 300K, but without the Mike Tyson being the obstacle in the way, I think he could have did 500, 600K. But right now, I don't think people got that moolah to purchase the fight. You know, so they're going to have to resort to doing different things. So I just think it's a wise in the near future for them to be more calculated when it comes to placing pay-per-views back to back, especially right after Mike Tyson. That overshadows a lot of different things. You know, when you're doing 2.5 billion impressions, yeah, you overshadowing everybody. You know what I'm saying? It ain't just the sport of boxing. You're overshadowing all the sports. You know what I'm saying? I'll go ahead and pick up a call real quick. How you doing, AKHi? Who this is and where you calling from?
Hey, it's Chris, my man, calling back. It's been a minute. Chris from Mississippi, boss.
Chris, what's going on? Talk to me. So, how you feeling about the Errol Spence comeback, man? I know you hyped. I mean, Errol Spence, my favorite fighter. I'm gonna go ahead and say it. He is my favorite fighter. So, what's your take on that fight?
I think it's a good fight, man. I think it's a good matchup. I'm very interested in seeing how Errol Spence comes back after the accident. If he's still the same, if there's some kinks need to be worked out. That's the only question mark I had about Errol Spence, because you just never know how a traumatic accident or any type of incident can affect a fighter coming back. You know, being the first thing that they do. You know what I'm saying? It could be anything. It could be a death in the family. It could be anything that could disrupt, a fighter. But being that it's actually a physical accident, that was the only thing I was worried about. But I really think this is a very good matchup. I thought it was a very good matchup before the accident, and I was very excited about seeing that. But I think it's going to be a very.
Yeah.
I got Errol, man. I have Errol. I have Errol based on the fact that Danny Garcia, he's a very, very good boxer, but Danny he lives off time, and Errol is he's so smothering till sometimes you can't get that timing off. You know, time takes patience. So I don't know if Errol's going to give him enough time to catch him.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
that's just my take on it.
That's the thing of, yeah, that's a great point. You know, timing, you require time to think, you require time to calculate your distance and timing in order to place the right punch. But Errol Spence don't give you that. Correct. He could fight at different paces, he could fight at different places, different positions in the inside, and also he varies his offense very well. Like fights that Danny Garcia did well later on in the fight, even if he lost the fights, like Sean Porter, and surprisingly, you know, he did well against Sean, real good, and even Keith Thurman. Yeah. But those guys gave him time to think, you know. But I think Errol Spence, his work rate and his offense, as far as him varying his offense to the extent that he does, I think that's going to trouble Danny Garcia, in which he won't be able to read Errol Spence like he does to other cats, you know. But what's your take on Angel Garcia claiming he saw something in Errol Spence's eyes that told him he ain't 100%? Errol Spence also got asked, you know, during the lead up to the fight, I think it was Fight Hub or something like that. You know, if you can't get, he said, if I can't get past Danny, then something is wrong. So basically, if I lose, then yeah, something definitely wrong with me, because I should be walking right past Danny Garcia. At least that's how he feels. But he said that he feels 100%, even a 70% Errol Spence could still beat a Danny Garcia. What's your take on all of the above?
Well, okay. We'll start with Angel Garcia question. At the end of the day, when a trainer, especially a father, asks something of that nature, he's seen something in his eyes that shows that he's not 100%. It's really kind of hard to tell because I really don't know if he saw something that could be falsified to him or if he's just playing this cat and mouse game. It's really hard to say. For me looking at Errol, I don't see anything. Just looking into his eyes that tell me that he slipped. I mean, he's not talking slow. He's not doing anything that tells me he's taking a step back. So I don't know what it is that Angel Garcia has seen. So I really think it's just a cat and mouse game that he's playing, trying to get into Errol's head. I'm thinking that's what it is.
Yeah, I agree with
but
you.
as far as Errol, you know what I'm saying. But as far as Errol saying that if he can't get past Danny Garcia, I think that's I think that's a point taken because I really and don't get me wrong, now I know that styles make fights, but once you get to a certain level, any style doesn't even matter at certain times. You understand what I'm saying? After you've seen so many people, the two people that beat Danny Garcia, the two people that beat Danny Garcia, I feel that Errol Spence would probably run through. He already beat Sean Porter. He didn't get a chance to knock off Keith Thurman. But at the same time, they're not the same fighter. But I don't think that Danny Garcia. Let me be careful when I say this. I don't want to say the same caliber as Sean Porter or Keith Thurman. But I just think his intensity doesn't match theirs. You understand what I'm saying? Those two fighters are very intense. So they would probably give Errol a harder fight, hence the Sean Porter fight, because he's so intense. He's in and out, and he gives so much. And Keith Thurman, he could throw punches from anywhere. He sets up these punches. He does all this. Danny Garcia is so patient. He waits till I just think it's not a good style to beat Errol Spence with. So I agree with Errol. If he can't get past this fight, he maybe does need to, think about, where he's going, or if he has taken a step back, or if he has slipped, because I really can't. There's nothing that tells me that Danny Garcia beats him. The best thing for Danny Garcia is really going to be early, because Errol works his jab a lot in the first 2 or 3 rounds, and if he's going to time him, that would be the best time to time him. But he throws his jab from different angles, so he's going to have to calculate that at some point too. So I really can't see him beating him. Not that Danny's not a good fighter. I just don't think he's the fighter to beat Errol.
Yeah, that's a great analysis, man, because obviously you brought up Errol Spence varying his jab, and Errol throws triple jab, quadruple jab, single jab.
Correct.
And that's hard to time. But yeah, you could time him, because Kell Brook did show that, Errol Spence is a little vulnerable early on. Everybody is, especially in the early rounds.
Right.
So that's the best time for Danny Garcia to get ahead on Errol Spence and kind of, take his confidence away, to remind him maybe you're still not A-okay after the car crash. I will say one thing about Danny Garcia, that he always step up to the occasion. He will fight a lesser, he will fight a lesser, level opposition, and he will remain on that level. But when he does step up, he will step his game up, right? But still, I just think Errol Spence is just on a whole another level, like you pointed out, because if you remember Danny Garcia last fight against Red Catch, he was catching Red Catch with all type of punches. And surprisingly, Red Catch was still there. He was a southpaw as well. Right. He even, Red Catch even went Mike Tyson on him. And that kind of, I think he was about to get stopped, but after he went Mike Tyson mode, that got him to the distance, because it had Danny Garcia tripping like, man, this man crazy. But nevertheless, Gervonta Davis almost stopped Red Catch's sparring with like 20-ounce gloves on. So yeah, if Errol Spence can't get past Danny Garcia, which is a great fighter, you know, don't get me wrong, but still, if he can't get past Danny Garcia, then that's not the Errol Spence we know, because the truth should walk right
Right.
past Danny Garcia. The only people that should give Errol Spence a challenge are the Crawfords of the world and things of that sort. We're talking about Errol Spence versus Canelo Alvarez. I think Errol Spence beats a Canelo Alvarez if he moves up the right way against Canelo. I just think Errol's that good. So yeah, I think this is just a stepping stone in the right direction. I feel like Errol Spence is going to win the fight. I won't say by knockout, because at the end of the day, I got to be mindful of him coming
And
off.
he has a chin.
Yeah, he does have got a chin, and Errol Spence coming off a car accident. You know, but something, I'm going to tell you one thing, though. Something about Errol Spence, he's one of them special fighters that stop these guys at the top level, like he did to, you know, Kell Brook and Lamar Pearson. He's one of them guys that, you know, if he's all the way there, if he's 100%, he's a problem. But Danny Garcia got a granted chin. However, I think if Errol Spence is going to get a knockout, then he's going to have to break Danny Garcia first to the body. Everybody got a great chin, but usually the fighters that got great chins don't have they can't take the best body work. Remember, Lamar Pearson even hurt Danny Garcia to the body. And we know Errol Spence the best body puncher in the game. He's a vicious body puncher. So, you know, obviously I got to go with Errol Spence by decision. However, you know, it's definitely going to be an interesting fight early on. But I definitely got to go with Errol Spence.
Definitely going to be a very interesting fight. You know, I mean, you know, and at the end of the day, you can never count out styles make fights. I just don't think the biggest point for me is I really don't think Danny Garcia's style is conducive to Errol. It's not the style that's going to beat him. You can't be a stagnant fighter, and Danny Garcia gets stagnant because he waits on his moment, and which is not bad. But you got that. You have to, with Errol, you have to be aggressive at some point in the fight. You can't just wait on an opportunity to swing after he swings. It's not, because really, I don't think that would work with him. I really don't. I think he had a better chance at doing something like that to Keith Thurman versus Errol Spence, because Keith Thurman will throw certain punches that are exactly the same, and you can't time that. But with Errol, he may throw the same punch, but he may throw it from a different side. It's kind of hard to time that. And like I say, his best shot is catching him when he's warming up with his jab in like the first 3 rounds. Because once he starts to throw 3 punches in a row, I think it's going to be a very, very tough fight for Danny Garcia.
Yeah, as soon as,
but I think Danny's going to give it his all, though.
Yeah, as soon as Errol Spence warm up the engine, then yeah, if Danny Garcia haven't capitalized on the moment by then he definitely in trouble, because Errol Spence is coming off his biggest layoff. That's a good way to look at it if you picking Danny Garcia. And also, Errol Spence is coming off a car accident, so mentally he still got a couple question marks. However, a lot of them questions will be answered in a few rounds. So if Danny Garcia doesn't do what he's supposed to do early on, then later on it's definitely going to smell trouble for him, because like you pointed out, the difference between Keith and Errol Spence could raise the intensity, and he's not as wide as Keith Thurman. You know, Keith Thurman, he be swinging. No. You know what I mean? You can see the punch a mile away. Yeah, because he telegraphing the punch. A mile away. Well, Errol Spence is straight to the target. Yep. You know what I mean? He's so sharp and accurate.
Straight to the target. His arms are close to his body. His shots, a lot of his shots are straight. And the only time he throws, if his shot is a little loopy, he's throwing a loopy shot after he's hit you with that straight shot. So it's going to be hard for you to do it. You know, it's going to be hard for him. You know, it's going to be hard for him to catch him. Throw, you know what I'm saying? You know, some of his best shots could be like Danny Garcia's best shot is, you know what I'm saying, catching somebody with a hook, when they catch somebody with the hook while they're throwing the hook. But it's kind of hard because Errol Spence hardly ever leads with a hook. So his first shot is going to be a straight shot, straight down the pipe. So if you can't come over that jab or something, you have a problem. And Danny doesn't do like a pull counter. You know what I'm saying? So It's gonna be a little hard. I think it's gonna be hard for him, but one thing I say about Danny's going to make this fight very interesting. I think he's just going to get the short end of the stick.
Right. Now, in the inside, if he does go to the inside, obviously, Errol Spence, how short and compact he is with his punches in the inside.
Wow, that's a done deal. I didn't even bring that up, right? Because that's not even Danny Garcia's fight. That's not even Danny Garcia's fight. You know what I'm saying? Danny Garcia is patient, wait on the perfect opportunity, in which a lot of times he gets that perfect opportunity. But the fighter has to present that opportunity. If they get to the point where they're inside and the punches are being smothered, and that's another great thing about that makes Errol so special, is the fact that when he fights on the inside, he knows how, even though his punches are compact, he knows how to let them off and let them land. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people can't do that. They get too close to the point where they smother their own punches. You know what I'm saying? And at the same time smother the opponent punches. So, but Errol's not like that. If he gets in a compact situation, which you're in a phone booth, the shit I say, he knows how to make all his punches land, even though he don't have a great extension on him.
Right. So can Errol Spence get a knockout if the fight goes to the inside, and Errol Spence could find his way inside as much as he wants? If he could find his way to the inside and make it an inside fight, can Errol pull a knockout, or you think it's going to be like a Mikey Garcia fight in which Errol Spence is going to control the pace, but it's still going to go the distance?
Well, I'll say this. It's hard. It's kind of hard for me to say that he would knock Danny Garcia out, because hell, I don't ever even recall Danny Garcia ever even being dropped. I remember him getting a good shot taken against Keith Thurman, and it was a big shot, but it didn't even wobble him. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
He
it
got
didn't
a hell
even
of a
wobble the guy.
And Mathise too. Remember, Mathise cracked him, and he didn't even drop him. So that's a great point.
Right. You know what I'm saying? And even with who was that? Oh man, I can't think of the guy. The guy named
Herrera. I mean, not maybe.
Was it Herrera? Exactly. It was Herrera. Yeah, it was Herrera. As soon as Herrera hit it, his nose just exploded. Yeah. He hit him with a shot, and blood just completely shot out. It was Herrera, because Herrera thought he won that fight. But that's the only thing he did was just take a step back, and it was an amazing shot. I mean, it's a lot of people that would have at least taken a knee after that shot, and Danny Garcia, it never fazed him. But I will say this, compared to Mikey Garcia, if he has a better chance of knocking out Danny Garcia versus Mikey, because Mikey went into survival mode. Danny won't go into survival mode.
Right.
Danny's just going to fight. Danny's going to fight. So if there is an opportunity to knock Danny Garcia out, he can capitalize on it versus fight Mikey Garcia. Mikey Garcia put him to the point where he just refused to get knocked out. So he moved. Danny's not going to do that.
His main objective was to survive. His main objective was to survive. That's a great point. And also with the Herrera thing, Herrera, he wasn't the biggest puncher in the world. Matter of fact, he was a light puncher. But, that's why timing is important, because you saw him time Danny Garcia. Mm-hmm. And I think Danny Garcia slept on Herrera. But nevertheless, Herrera, he showed up and showed out. You know what I'm saying?
Did, though.
Yeah, and Herrera showed up and showed out. And it shows you in the sport of boxing, like you focus on this point, style make fights, and boxing is the theory of the unexpected. That point right there, you just see how Herrera came out of nowhere and nearly upset Danny Garcia. And like I said, I'm not saying Danny Garcia gonna do the same, but I'm saying Errol Spence, with the way he throws punches, how sharp he is with his timing, and if he the same Errol Spence we know, then it's gonna be a hell of a fight. When I'm talking about, it's gonna be a hell of a beatdown on the favor of Errol Spence. Yeah. But at the same time, if he's not all the way there, it's going to be more competitive. But you never know. But I do want to
know. But I will say this. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say I couldn't, just based off of Danny's chin. I can't call it. I can't say that it won't happen. But I've just never witnessed it with Danny. I've never even seen the guy hurt before. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if a certain amount of punches that are dropping, but I could definitely see it getting to the point where either the corner throws in the towel or the referee stops it. I can see that.
Well,
but dropping him, it's hard for me to say.
Well, I got to keep you in the house because, man, you know your boxing, man. You know your boxing, and you brought up a great point, which was Errol Spence never leaves with a hook, kind of like Roy Jones does, or any of them fighters like Floyd Mayweather. He's always a textbook fighter. He fundamentally sound. So the fact that you brought that up alone, you know what I mean? You definitely know your boxing. So I got to ask. I got a lot of questions for you. So before I ask you my questions, do you got anything in mind you want to say? Did I jump too quick in? Did you want to ask anything?
Oh no, you good, brother.
All right, let's go then.
No, you good. I'm here for it.
All right, let's talk about it then. So let me ask you this. First of all, if Errol Spence is victorious in a spectacular fashion against Danny Garcia, where do you place him on the pound for pound list? Because currently I got him number 2. You know, new media, we will come out with pound for pound list at the end of this year. But where would you place Errol Spence on your pound for pound list if he's victorious against Danny Garcia?
If he's victorious against Danny Garcia, you got to put him number 1, based off the resume alone. I mean, the guy. I mean, there's a lot of fights out. Terrence Crawford is a beast. Terrence Crawford is the man, but Terrence Crawford hasn't faced a Danny Garcia. He hasn't faced a Sean Porter. He hasn't faced he hasn't faced Lamont Peterson. You know what I'm saying? He has a great resume. The only thing that makes him fall, the only thing that will make him really fall short is for Errol Spence is the Keith Thurman fight. But you know what I'm saying? That was more on Keith Thurman than it was on Errol Spence. So you know what I'm saying? It's nothing he can really do about that. But he's faced the top people. He's faced everybody that's been considered number 1 outside of Keith Thurman and Terrence Crawford. Terrence Crawford hasn't faced any of them. That's my only point. He hasn't faced any of them that's been considered number 1, though.
Yeah. Well,
you understand what I'm saying?
Right. Obviously, you brought up Lamar Pearson. You know, he haven't faced a Lamar Pearson, but he did face a Flex Diaz that supposedly beat Lamar Pearson, and you know Crawford did wash him. But definitely the top names at 147, Crawford have not faced yet, in which Errol Spence have faced 2 of them so far, which is Kell Brook and obviously Sean Porter. But nevertheless, you know, and now Danny Garcia. But you know, obviously Crawford just fought a Kell Brook. So I still will put Terrence Crawford pound for pound number 1 in my book, because I felt like Errol Spence is going to have to fight Crawford for that pound for pound number 1 status. Is going to be number 1 versus number 2. And I'm not just talking about in the division. I'm talking about literally in boxing. That's the fight we talking about, the fight of the decade, right? But Crawford did come out and say that we can't both claim we number 1. We can't both claim we the best. We got to fight each other. So yeah, man. I mean, if Errol Spence beat Danny Garcia, that's gonna put him higher on the pound for pound list for sure on a lot of old media websites as well. But also I want to ask you, you know, Mike Tyson, after his exhibition with Roy Jones, after the fight,
I already know what you want to say.
You know, after the fight, he made a big statement. He said, "Listen, man, we offered a lot of guys to fight. I'm not going to mention any names, so I'm gonna mention names for him." He was talking about the Tyson Furies of the world. He was talking about those guys that he mentioned prior to the fight that he sent offers to, but they declined. Tyson Fury came out and said, "Listen, it was a lose-lose situation, because if this old man knocked me down, then people are going to say I'm a bum. If I get aggressive and do something to him, they're going to say I'm a bully." But the fact that he brought up, what if this old man knocked me down? That was a bad look on his behalf. Nevertheless, Shannon the Cannon, he came out and said, "Listen, man, I'm smelling a lot of duck sauce." He said, I've been begging for this opportunity. You know, I've been begging for this opportunity to feed my family. Mike Tyson knows how bad I want this fight, and they went ahead and avoided me. He tried to say that, you know, Mike Tyson didn't want to smoke with him. Holyfield did the same. Holyfield said that Mike Tyson, people don't want to make the fight. Mike Tyson said otherwise, because he said, "Listen, I think the people that's handling his business are not handling it the right way. He needs to give me a call personally, and we could make it happen. That's what Mike Tyson said. He won a trilogy with Holyfield.
Right.
So first of all, what's your take on all of that? And who would you prefer? Would you prefer a Shannon Cannon or Holyfield?
Me personally, I would prefer Holyfield. Only reason why I prefer, well, it's several reasons. One reason is because they have history. You know what I'm saying? They have history, and the third fight, just announcing that fight would make it big. Just due to the first two fights, you understand what I'm saying? Just announcing that fight will make it big. It would be bigger than the Roy Jones. It would be bigger than the Roy Jones because you could never at any point, even though Roy went up to heavyweight later in his career, you know what I'm saying? You never really conceived or really foreseen Roy fighting Mike Tyson at any point in his career. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
But with Holyfield, they have history. And to me, I feel like it's unfinished business because, you know what I'm saying, Holyfield won the first fight. Beautiful. The second fight, I felt like Mike was actually doing so much better into the disqualification. So I just really feel like it's unfinished business. I think that will be a better one for me. And they're very much more closer to age. I don't know what type of shape he's in, but when it comes to the Shannon Briggs, the thing with him is, I think that would be a good fight too, but it will be a little bit scarier for me to see Mike face him, because if you ever see Shannon, this man looks like he's ripped every day of his life. Have you ever? I've never seen Shannon out of shape. Have you ever seen this man out of shape?
No, after he made his comeback, man. That's a in shape old guy, man. Let's go, champ. Like, he stay in shape. You can't.
Let's go, champ. I've never seen this guy not in shape, man.
And he 250.
You know what I'm saying? Because you look at
he 250.
Exactly. And you look at Roy. Roy came in looking like he was out of shape. So, you know what I'm saying? Both of them, you never really knew which way that was going to go. I think that fight came, for me, going into the fight, not while the fight going on, but coming into the fight. For me, it was whoever was going to tire first. For me, that's the way I saw that. Or if Mike catch him with something, he could have easily dropped Roy, just based off Roy's history of getting dropped and knocked out. You know what I'm saying? But the way Roy came in, I just felt like it would have been whoever tired first. But when it comes to Shannon, I don't, you know what I'm saying? That one is scary for me. You know what I'm saying? I don't think Shannon could have did this when Mike was 21 to 26. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But now, you know what I'm saying?
The age gap that you brought up, you know, I think, Shannon, he a little younger for sure. And also, he just retired recently. The man was knocking out everybody, and he was knocking out cats that were current fighting today. You know what I mean? So, you know, he's more active. He's in shape. He could go rounds. He's bigger than Mike. He's more healthier than Mike. He's more mentally, he's more stable than Mike at this point. And especially his IQ is higher than Mike, you know, today. Obviously, you know, prime for prime is a different story, but we talking about currently.
Absolutely.
And Holyfield, on the other hand, that's more of an even fight. I got to agree with you. I'd rather see that because of the story and because it's an even playing field on this fight in particular. Holyfield is probably a little older, you know, from what I heard. I think, ain't he like 58?
Yeah, he almost 60.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Holyfield almost 60.
So that might, you know, because obviously for the people that don't know, Holyfield always had the style to give Mike Tyson problems. Stylistically, you know, it's just that molding in the inside, him knowing how to rough up Mike Tyson, frustrate him, you know, use his head wisely, use his arms to lock up, you know, Mike Tyson. Roy Jones even used the blueprint, some of, you know, Holyfield blueprint to handle Mike. And I personally thought Roy Jones was going to be too small and, you know, not strong enough to hold Mike Tyson back. So the fact that Roy Jones was able to, I'm like, man, Holyfield got a chance for sure. I can't count him out. But at the end of the day, I think Mike
Right.
Tyson, he getting his senses back. Now he sharpened up. He had a little exhibition. Now I think if they're gonna fight again, him and Roy Jones, so be it. But yeah, he has to close the story with Holyfield. They got to close the chapter. It's unfinished business. So let me ask you this question though: why? You Mike Tyson obviously is a short fighter, compact. He always uses his disadvantage as his advantage to slip punches from taller fighters and go in the inside to do damage. However, when Holyfield came along, obviously you saw him nullify Mike Tyson in the inside. So is this just another example of style make fights? Because you would think Mike Tyson, he will have the upper hand because he's an inside fighter. Holyfield is fighting him in the inside. You will think, hey, that's Mike Tyson P's and Q's. So what went wrong?
Well, first of all, one thing about it is we always got to remember this. Evander Holyfield didn't start out as a heavyweight. So when you are smaller, when you're lighter than heavyweight, most of your boxing comes from straight boxing because it's not strong arming someone. You understand what I'm saying? When you get the heavyweights, you get the people that just start pushing you around. Boom, boom, boom. But he starts out boxing. So when he comes to heavyweight, he actually does box enough to the point where when he gets in the middle, when he gets inside, he can continue to box. That's what I actually see, because at the end of the day, you know what I'm saying, somebody being stronger than the other one, once you gain weight, you gain weight. You understand what I'm saying? It's not like he still fought Evander Holyfield while Evander Holyfield was a light heavyweight. No, he was a full-fledged heavyweight. So the weight is the weight. You know what I'm saying? Regardless of what it is, if somebody is small and you can push them around, if they gain weight, you can't push them around anymore. It doesn't matter that they were small. But, you know what I'm saying, he gained the weight to be able to bang on the inside. But he was a straight puncher. You know what I'm saying? I think that was one of the keys.
Who was a straight puncher? Who was a straight puncher?
Evander Holyfield was. Holyfield was.
Well, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by he's a straight puncher?
He's a straight puncher where a lot of his punches are straight out to the point where, because if you throw your punches straight enough to get a person to back up, like keep your jab, you punching them just straight up. Once you get on the inside, you know what I'm saying, you can continue to box, but you just throw them shorter. You know what I'm saying? Throw them shorter. Now, I will say this. I was a little bit more surprised at the fact that he would win a lot of those when it came to Mike, because Mike basically lived his life on the inside. But he's a taller fighter. He gained just enough weight to stay in the heavyweight. So it wasn't like he was so much lighter that he couldn't hold him back. But Evander Holyfield could fight, and one thing about it is I don't know if maybe if Mike Tyson got discouraged at some point in that fight. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. I know he really got discouraged in the second fight about his eye getting busted open. But the first fight, it's really hard to tell. You know what I'm saying? I just try to base it based off, you know what I'm saying, what I know their history to be. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
In the second fight, did Mike Tyson get frustrated because of the cut? Was it from a punch or a headbutt? Yeah. I don't remember. Was it a punch or a headbutt?
Well, Mike claimed it was a headbutt. You know what I'm saying? I don't recall if it was a punch or if it was a headbutt. But he was going into a fight with Evander Holyfield. It's like going to a fight with Sean Porter. He's coming in with his head.
Yeah,
you understand what I'm saying?
Right. And
Evander Holyfield, Sean Porter, and Bernard Hopkins. There's a great chance you're going to get headbutted in the face.
Of course.
You understand what I'm saying? Yeah, so even if he didn't hit him with a punch, he can have that.
Yeah, they definitely veterans when it comes to that. But I will say this, Holyfield is sick in the inside. I mean, he's really sick. I'm talking about he knows how to fight in the inside. He got an iron chin that he can rely on, and that catching and shooting is really his game. And I think Mike Tyson, just the fact that he always fought taller fighters, and when I say taller fighters, I mean really tall fighters, way taller than him. He was always been comfortable with that, more comfortable than fighting a guy like nearly his height or just a little bit taller. I think he's more effective fighting those guys. So, ain't no telling. In my humble opinion, Mike Tyson was really never the same once he went to jail and came back. Muhammad Ali and Mike Tyson, even though they had different paths, their career went kind of similar. What I mean, Muhammad Ali was looking, you couldn't touch him. You know what I mean? The greatest. And then obviously the 3-year layoff when he was fighting for his people with the Vietnam War and all the above, that took something out of him. You could tell he was in the same Ali once he came back. He was a little bit slower. His feet wasn't the same, so on and so forth. Mike Tyson was the same way. He was a killer. And then obviously at some point he lost focus and lost to that man in the mirror. He should have never let Buster Douglas beat him. I'm just, call a spade a spade. But obviously things happen. In my humble opinion, he did beat Buster Douglas because he knocked him out, but the referee gave him a 15-second count.
Knockdown,
yeah, he gave him a 15-second count, and he turned around and gave Mike Tyson a short count. But nevertheless, I think by that point, he was training like 3 weeks, 4 weeks for the fight, which that's a mistake. You never see Floyd Mayweather do that.
Very much so. Got to get at least 8.
Yeah, at least 8, man. If you're doing less than 8, you tripping. You know what I mean? You cheating the fans, and more so, you cheating yourself. And that's what happened to Mike. He lost to that man in the mirror. He was never the same after jail. So, the Lennox Lewis of the world, the Holyfields, they really didn't fight the best version of Mike. The best version of Mike, man, it would have taken an Ali to get the job done. You know what I mean? If we keep it in the trio. But last question, that I got for you is, Sean Porter, he surprisingly came out and said that the reason why the Crawford fight didn't happen is not because we are friends. It's not because of friendship. He said we could be friends after I kick his ass. So I find that was like a huge statement. That's a big statement, to say the least. You know what I'm saying? For Crawford to say something like that, not Crawford, Sean Porter to say something like that, that's a big statement on his behalf. So, he also added that, when he talked to Crawford told him, listen, he's not interested in the fight right now because he got other plans. So he assumed that the other plans are Errol Spence. So he didn't want to come in between. Right. But seeing that he's fighting Kell Brook, he's seeing that he's doing this, he's doing that. He's like, you know what? How about, me and Terrence Crawford? So he's now entertaining the idea. So what's your take on them comments by Sean Porter?
I mean, I don't know. I don't see, Sean Porter's not really the, the blowing the smoke type of guy. So, there's a certain amount of genuine in his statements. I get it, because at the end of the day, if the fight is available, if the fight is available, I would know which way, whose side is on that's not making it. All I know is the fight is not happening. Sean Porter say he's available, he's ready to fight. Terrence Crawford is taking another route. For me, it could come down to politics, and that's why I was really hope that Terrence Crawford does come out of the top ranked thing, so all those fights can be available, because I'm really starting to stop. I'm tired of waiting on him. Terrence Crawford is getting up there in age. By the time he gets to start fighting these guys over here in PBC, that same man in the mirror could affect him. That Father Time could affect him, because he's like, what, 33, 34 now?
Yeah.
That's up there. Most fighters lose their first. Right. Absolutely. By 35, when you hit 35, that's when most fighters lose their first fight. Right. You know what I'm saying? That's when it really affects them, and especially if you're fighting the top fighters out there. So, I don't know how to take take the comments of Sean Porter. I think he's genuine in what he says. I mean, I don't see nothing that says that he isn't. You know what I'm saying? You know, me personally, I have to see where it's wrong that he's saying it, and I really don't see it. But if I do see it, I will call it. But I mean, I think it's a genuine statement. You know. So,
Right.
you know what I'm saying? I think he really wants to fight. But, you know, because Sean Porter's game to fight anybody, though. That's him. He's game to fight anybody, regardless if he can beat that person or not. You know what I'm saying? He is game to fight anybody unless it's somebody that he feels that's less than him that almost beat him.
Right.
Hence, my man,
Like
Ugas.
Ugas. Yeah. Right.
You know what I'm saying?
That's a great point. And let me say this, because you brought up a lot of great points. I think it's genuine what he said, but what I'm not understanding is that, you know, I'd rather see actions, you know what I'm saying? And we keep hearing about this. I mean, I've been talking about this fight for a year now, and at first it's the friendship and now it's not. But one thing for sure, he is the mandatory. So when I talked to Crawford team, they told me if Sean Porter activates the mandatory position, then it's smoke time. All that friendship go out of the window. So if Sean wants to fight as bad as he claims, you know, it'd be wise if he activate the mandatory position because he is the mandatory. He ranked #1. Crawford is mandatory, will be due soon. So why not activate the mandatory position? Because, you know, making statements like this, go ahead and apply the mandatory position. That's the best way to get the fight. Because as you heard Bob keeps saying, listen, I can't afford to pay off these guys. I'm losing money. He keep claiming he losing money. We know that's not true. But what I'm saying is, Bob, it don't look like he gonna make the Sean Porter fight. So if Sean Porter want to make the Crawford fight, he could apply the mandatory position if he's sincere about it. But in the same, I think it's the same interview, he did say that he's more interested. He sounded like he's more interested in the Errol Spence rematch. He said that he's the mandatory for the Errol Spence fight versus Danny Garcia, which I'm like, I'd rather see you against Terrence Crawford at this point because I want to see Sean Porter against
You've already lost it.
Yeah, you already lost it. In my humble opinion, Errol Spence dominated Sean Porter more than Keith Thurman did. I think Keith Thurman fight was more closer. Errol Spence managed to drop him and win one more round than Keith Thurman did. So that being said, I'd rather see Sean Porter fight, you know, a Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence maybe fighting Ugas. Then they could fight each other. Or if Keith Thurman could get a W, he could go ahead and get himself back in the mix. But my question to you is, would you rather see Sean Porter against Errol Spence for the second time, even though Errol Spence is about to beat Danny Garcia and Sean Porter if he's victorious against Danny? Keep in mind, Danny Garcia and Sean Porter fought for that WBC title to begin with. So Errol Spence already beat both of them. I mean, he haven't beat Danny Garcia yet, but if he is victorious, then he would have beaten both guys that fought for that title. So would you rather see Sean Porter fight Errol Spence or Crawford at this point?
To Sean Porter?
Yeah.
I would probably say Crawford, only because I think that could, for him to get another shot at Errol Spence, it would be more of a demand to see Sean Porter get that rematch if he can beat Terrence Crawford. You understand what I'm saying? Because at the end of the day, once he did lose, and he lost his strap in that fight. once you did lose, if Errol chose to go somewhere else, which I'm not saying is right or wrong, if he did choose to go somewhere else, and he's not entertaining the rematch at that point, you go take the next biggest fight out there, and there's no other bigger fight than fight Terrence Crawford. Now, you beat Terrence Crawford, there's no way that rematch could be denied, in my opinion.
And
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and just to add to that,
no way it could be denied.
Right, and just to add on to that, if he loses to Errol Spence a second time, if they do fight again, then he ain't getting the Terrence Crawford fight. I'm gonna go ahead and tell you that, because
He's
Terrence,
not. He's
yeah,
absolutely not getting
yeah,
the Terrence Crawford
yeah,
fight.
Terrence gonna look at it like, man, I ain't about to fight you. You just lost to Errol Spence twice. You lost to Kell Brook, who I just beat. You did that. You know what I mean? Like, it's just not a good choice
Right.
for Crawford, Kell Brook. For Crawford at that point. That's why, if, like I said, if Sean Porter is sincere about what he's saying, which I believe him, then he need to go ahead and activate the mandatory position, because one thing Crawford is not gonna do, he ain't on no Lomachenko. He's not gonna request no French fries belt, no witness protection belt. He
Right.
with the smoke. When your nickname is Bud, you ain't gonna turn down no mandatory Porter. You know what I mean? So, like I said, if he's
That's
sincere, he need to go ahead and pull off that move. But what's your take? I got to get your take on Terrence Crawford comments, in which he said, listen, when it comes to Keith Thurman, when it comes to Sean Porter, these guys never mentioned my name when they had titles. Keith Thurman kept saying,
It's the truth.
yeah, he said Keith Thurman kept saying, listen, you got to fight Kell Brook, you got to fight Amir Khan, you got to do this, you got to do that. He was acting more like Crawford manager than a guy who want to fight Crawford, right? Sean Porter, on the other hand, he never mentioned Crawford name. He always said, we friends, we this, we that. As soon as they came off losses, now they calling out Crawford heavy. Keith Thurman, he calling out Crawford. Talking about send me a contract, I'll sign it on live. Then behind closed doors, he requests $10 million. Sean Porter, like I said, he keep pushing for this fight, but he not pushing for the fight behind closed doors by activating the mandatory position. So what's your take on Crawford comments?
I think they're valid. I think they're extremely valid, because at the end of the day, they didn't want any problems until he get a belt. Sean Porter did the same thing to Errol Spence. He didn't want to give Errol Spence the shot. You know what I'm saying? Telling him to go get the belt. He did the same thing. Then you look at your boy. It's famous in your on your show with Keith Thurman. You better not duck me, son. He didn't have anybody, and he wanted to fight. He wanted to fight Paulie Malignaggi. And Paulie Malignaggi tell him, "Won't you go do something? Won't you go and get something?" But see, now when they don't have anything, they want to call everybody out. But people are calling you out when you have something. Now, neither one of them has anything.
Right.
So I think his comments are very valid.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you. You brought about a point that a lot of people forgot about. Remember, Errol Spence had a title. Errol Spence was the IBF champion, beat Kell Brook, the guy who beat Sean Porter, right? And Errol Spence said, "Listen,
right," but he wanted to fight.
Yeah, he called out Sean Porter. He called out Sean Porter. He said, right. "Listen,
he wanted Sean Porter before Sean Porter even lost his belt to Kell Brook. That was the point."
No, and even after though, even Errol Spence. Remember, Errol Spence beat Kell Brook for the United Kingdom. Right. He came back to the United States. Sean Porter at the time, he already lost to Kell Brook. I think he even already lost to Keith Thurman as well. So at that point, Errol Spence said, "I'm willing to give both Sean Porter and Danny Garcia an opportunity at my title since they titleless." And Sean Porter turned around and said, "I don't got Errol Spence in my plans. I'm focusing on Keith Thurman rematch, and I'm also focusing on Danny Garcia, a guy who doesn't have a title, mind you." So you are correct. Errol Spence was the boogeyman before he became the A side when he beat Mikey Garcia, showing that he's the cash cow of the division. And then he fought Sean Porter, unified the division. Then tables turn. Now you see Keith calling him out. Now you see Sean calling him out. Now you see even Danny Garcia calling him out. So, ironically, that's how it worked. But yeah, I gotta agree with Crawford 100%, because they definitely kept telling him to do this and do that. They never mentioned his name. Now when they got everything to gain and nothing to lose, now they want Terrence Crawford fight. Right. But they still good fights. They are still good fights to compare.
All of them are good fights. All of them. Yeah. Even if Danny Garcia loses this fight, he's still a good fight. He's still a good fight in the rematches with Thurman and Sean Porter. Hell, he's a good fight for Crawford. I think that's a less of a fight. You know what I'm saying? Because I really think Crawford would run through Danny Garcia But the other two, I think you know what I'm saying, it would still be a good fight for both of them. They all are good fights, man. I think they're all the top four. You know what I'm saying? They're the top four. Those are the guys to beat, regardless of who has a title, who doesn't. There's the guys that everybody else is looking up to fight. You understand what I'm saying? They're gatekeepers to somebody. You understand what I'm saying? Anybody coming up there, they are a gatekeeper to somebody. You get through this guy, you can get through the title. You understand what I'm saying? They
It's
all
the
are good
deepest
fights.
division.
But you know what I'm saying? That's all.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But, you know, at the end of the day, there's two at the helm. That's Terrence Crawford and that's Errol Spence for the moment. With Errol Spence until after Saturday, and then we'll still see. And then we'll see what goes on after that. I mean, they're all four guys, but at the end of the day, for Sean Porter and Keith Thurman, those two, they need to slow their rolls really, because at the end of the day, the straps that you held, you no longer retain. So you don't get to just get pushed to the front. You know, you don't just get pushed to the front, even though there are good fights to be made there. You know what I'm saying? There are good fights to be made there. I just think they need to slow their rolls a little bit, because I think they're talking like they're still champions and they're not. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But they are good fights.
Facts. And yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you know, Crawford, he's still, like I said, if Sean Porter does activate the mandatory position, that's why it's important for him to do so. Then Crawford have no other choice but to face Sean, and that will be a great measuring stick to where Crawford is at. Because now think about it, if Crawford knocks out Sean, something that nobody ever did, or dominates Sean, that's something few fighters have ever done. You know what I mean? Then we're gonna look at him. Oh man, the demand is gonna be extremely high to see him versus Errol Spence. You know, and you know, vice versa. You know, for Sean Porter as well. You know, if he looks good or if he's victorious, then the Errol Spence fight, then it's definitely on the table. So yeah, I mean, these fights are great, and the best must fight the best. So as long as Crawford is looking to fight Errol, as long Errol's looking to fight Crawford, those are the two best. Everything else is secondary. So I appreciate talking with you, my brother, man. Great having a conversation with you and spinning the knowledge, man.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Appreciate you, brother.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Man, came here dropping knowledge on my AKHis. Shout out to everybody in the chat. OG, Davis, Jones. Shout out to everybody. Oh, man. Okay. How you doing, AKHi? Who this is and where you calling from?
Yo, this is Joey calling from South Florida.
Joey. I mean, this is the Joey I talked to before?
Yep.
What's going on, Joey? Who you got your money on tonight? I mean, this weekend.
I mean, I'm just gonna have to go with Errol Spence, because even though, I do think this car accident does have him slurring his words and everything, I think it also is kind of that motivation booster. Because if you ask me, the route that Errol Spence was taking before the car accident even happened wasn't. I didn't like the way he was going. I honestly thought that was going to have an effect on him and his skills and everything. Because in his own words, he said he was taking breaks, he was blowing up in weight. But I think now after this, it's humbled him, committed him, and you hear from him and his trainer that he's more focused than ever. So I think we're going to see, maybe not see the same Errol Spence, but we may see arguably a better Errol Spence, simply for the fact that this may be the most determined, committed Errol Spence we've seen in a long time, because he's been training apparently since February.
Right. So you got him winning by decision or knockout? How you see it going?
I mean, I've seen Danny Garcia up against Sean Porter, Batiste, and Keith Thurman, so we all know Danny Garcia's got a granite chin. This man's not even been dropped yet. So I don't see him, if Danny Garcia does get dropped, it's probably not going to be from a punch to the chin. It's probably going to be just from a body shot. But all in all, I do see like the biggest. I do see Errol Spence really winning by decision, more or less. I mean, then again, like I see him winning by decision, but I don't think this is going to be a walk in the park for Errol Spence. Danny Garcia is a tough fighter. It's just my biggest issue with him is that he's a very slow starter. He started slow against Thurman, like real slow, and then he tried to come back, and it was too late by then. And if he has the same process he does with Spence, he's gonna. I think he'll get beat worse, because if you start slow with Spence, you're not gonna. It's not gonna end well. Because Spence only gets better as the fight prolongs.
Yeah, it won't be wise for him to start slow with Errol Spence because him coming off a car accident, coming off a big layoff. It'd be wise for Danny Garcia to turn up from round one to kind of take away Errol Spence's confidence, to remind him of what he went through. But if he does start off slow and let Errol Spence get in the mood, get in his rhythm, yeah, that'd be disastrous for a guy like Danny Garcia. But yeah, didn't you say you want to talk about Crawford or something like that? Debate on like a particular topic.
Yeah, I mean, I just like. I know everybody's looking at Errol Spence as the cash cow because of his 2 back-to-back pay-per-view numbers, and they're good. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know if it's me. I don't really look at Errol Spence as the boogeyman, because although I do see he wants to take all these fighters, I think he honestly, for all the talk he makes saying that he'll watch Terrence Crawford, I think he respects Crawford more than any fighter he's ever faced.
Yeah.
Simply for the fact that out of everybody he's ever gone up against, he's demanding a 60-40 split. And frankly, in my personal opinion, I think he's doing that because I just think it's because of insurance. Because if there's anybody that can potentially beat Spence, it's Crawford. So because ever since this fight has been talked about, for starters, I noticed Errol Spence said something in that interview with Danny Garcia. He said no fighter has called him out in 2 years. We both know that's not true.
Yeah.
Because because Terrence Crawford pulled up to Errol Spence to talk about that over 2 years ago. So we're not gonna act like that. Like what he said wasn't like that was a low key diss to Terrence Crawford.
Well, Errol Spence, Errol Spence felt like they pulled up on each other. But yeah, I get your point. Crawford did call him out, so that definitely somebody did call him out for the past 2 years, which is Crawford. He was the only one, but somebody did mention his name. But let me read the super chat before you get your comments across. Lonzo Thompson, we need this fight, Crawford / Spence. I really hope we don't get robbed like a lot of other fights that we didn't get to see, like Wilder Josh. Yes, sir. And a lot of fights that didn't happen in time, like during their prime. I think we gotta be mindful that Crawford versus Errol Spence, if they do fight in 2021, we talking about pound for pound number 1 versus pound for pound number 2. We talking about the number 1 versus the number 2 guy, not just in the division, but in the sport as a whole, in their prime. Obviously Crawford toward the late stages of his prime. Nevertheless, he's still in his prime. So is Errol. So yeah, it definitely has to happen. But yeah, go ahead, get your Joey, finish your points.
The thing is, when I'm looking at Errol Spence, I don't look at this kid as a man who's afraid of fighting anybody, because it's like you said, this man could have chose any fighter to take on, but he chose Danny Swift Garcia, who's a top 5 welterweight. Like that takes a lot of nerve, considering you just came off of a car accident. So that says a lot. But at the same time, when I look at everything that Errol Spence has said prior to now, I don't know, maybe this is just my way of looking at it. He's put roadblocks after roadblocks as to why the Crawford fight can't happen. And at first it made sense. Like the first thing he said was he wanted Crawford to get a belt. Crawford did get a belt. Then he was talking about the other side of the street, saying that Crawford needed to come over in order to fight him. And yet we see Deontay Wilder fight Tyson Fury. So that really is not a good reasoning. And now the most recent thing is I want a 60-40 split over Crawford. And I'd understand if Crawford was a big no-name and he's been the A-side for the longest, but even in his first pay-per-view, he did 50-50 with Mikey Garcia. And that wasn't the biggest fight. That's not an 80 million. That's not I mean, it was a good pay-per-view fight, But that wasn't that's nowhere near as huge as the Terrence Crawford Errol Spence fight we want. So I'm thinking about it is how can you call 50-50 with Mikey Garcia and split a $2 million purse for Sean Porter, but Terrence Crawford you're saying you need a 60-40 split against.
Yeah. Now I gotta disagree with you on Errol Spence putting roadblocks with Crawford for the fight not to happen. I don't think he put roadblocks. I just think he's been doing what he's supposed to do because he fighting on PBC. This is not a fighter thing. I think this is a network decision in which they feel like, listen, Crawford, you know, if he stick with Top Rank, it is what it is. You know what I mean? The fight is going to build up and then they're going to fight each other. But unlike the Wilder situation with Fury, Wilder had nobody to fight on PBC. I mean, he fought Ortiz twice. Like, who fights a guy like that twice? Nobody fights a guy like Ortiz twice. He couldn't get a fight with Anthony Joshua. So he had nobody else to fight. So he had to fight Fury because of their unfinished business. But let me read the super chat real quick before I respond further. Jones said, we need to stop talking about Spence versus Crawford right now. This fight should not happen till one of them get Pacquiao belt, undisputed matchup. So, yeah, well, we're going to get to that. That's the network plan. Their plan is for this fight to be for undisputed. But before I get to that, my point is, obviously, Errol Spence have mega fights to make at 147 on his own network, which is Danny Garcia, Keith Thurman, Sean Porter, and Mikey Garcia. So, obviously, the Mikey Garcia fight you brought up, he fought him for 50-50. Remember, that's when Errol Spence was just a boogeyman. That's when Errol Spence first fought Mikey Garcia. Mikey Garcia was more established because that was his 5th weight division. Mikey Garcia moved up 4 divisions prior to that. He fought Broner. He fought this guy. He fought that guy. I mean, Mikey Garcia's resume is full of accomplishment, and he was a pound-for-pound fighter. Yeah. He was more accomplished than Errol Spence, and not just more accomplished. He had a big name. He was on main event. I mean, since the Salido fight, if I'm not mistaken, I think Mikey Garcia been the main event for his fights since the Salido fight. So that's a long time. Errol Spence just became a main event fighter few fights prior to that. So the point that I'm trying to make, he had to do 50-50 split with Mikey Garcia. Matter of fact, he had no other choice because at the time, nobody was willing to fight him. Sean Porter wasn't willing to fight him. All these guys in his own division wasn't willing to fight him. So after he beat Mikey Garcia and did tremendous numbers on pay-per-view, selling $350K, that's when Errol Spence started becoming the cash cow. That's when you kind of start seeing a gap between him and other fighters. That's when Sean Porter looked at Errol Spence like, hold on. Like, this man just did $350K against Mikey. He sold 47,000 tickets. He's like, you know what? It is what it is. I got no choice now. Mikey Garcia made me look bad by, fighting Errol Spence, a lightweight versus a welterweight. And I'm over here at 147 not answering Errol Spence call. So he fought Errol Spence. I don't know what the split was, but I'm pretty sure Errol Spence was the A side, the way he was talking. So I'm pretty sure Errol Spence was the A side because if I'm not mistaken, I think Errol Spence had a rematch clause and Sean Porter didn't. That's why Sean Porter, when he lost, he couldn't get the rematch because Errol Spence had a rematch clause. I'm not sure 100% on that, but Errol Spence was definitely the A side in that negotiations in particular. And moving forward against Danny Garcia, obviously, it's a tough fight. He's the A side. He's the A side. I mean, even Danny Garcia called him out. He got no straps, none of the above. So the point is, he getting the bigger piece of the pie. I don't know how much he getting. I don't know what his split is, but he is the A side clearly. Now against Terrence Crawford, he is the A side because A side is money. It's not resume. It's not names. Which Errol Spence and Crawford got good names. Both of them got good names. Both of them are on the pound for pound top 3. But at the end of the day, Errol Spence is the A side because he brings more money to the table. And that's a fact. We can't dispute that because if we look at both of their pay-per-views, Errol Spence, if he does another 300, 400K on pay-per-view against Danny Garcia, that's total of 700K on pay-per-view sales. I think 700. No, maybe more than that. I'll take that back. $1 million plus on pay-per-view.
Yeah, around $1 million.
Yeah, if you total all his pay-per-view sales. on the other hand, Crawford, he did 25K against what's his name? Against I think it was Postal. Yeah. 25K, 50K against Postal. He did 150K against Amir Khan. Yes, that's like total of 200. It's not even debatable. I mean, you know what I mean? But the point I'm trying to make, Crawford, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to shit on Crawford as far as he's not a big name.
No, I know.
I think Crawford was mashed up wrong. Like the Postal fight should have been on pay-per-view. The Amir Khan fight should have been on pay-per-view. Those fights should have been on free TV, but obviously HBO was going out of business at the time, and Top Rank made a miscalculation. So, but that will fall against them in negotiations. So when Errol Spence says 60-40, I think that's a fair split. But on the other hand, for Crawford to kind of even out the playing field, he like, I want 60-40 my way. But that's all talk. That's all just talk. At the end of the day, they're going to face each other. That's for sure. Because Errol Spence said, I won't move from 147 till I fight Crawford. And likewise, on the other hand, Crawford said the same thing. So I don't think like we should be worried about that fight not happening. It ain't a matter of if this fight is going to happen. It's a matter of when.
It's when.
Right. But
it's when. Yeah.
And when it comes to that when, question in particular, you got to be mindful. You got to remember.
33.
Yeah, but Crawford said out of his own mouth, I don't want to fight Errol Spence right now. He got to look good. I want him to be 100% before he fight me because I don't want no excuses. He's a real champion. That's why I got so much respect for Crawford. He want to make sure Errol Spence is all the way there before he fight him because he don't want to, people to make excuses. Oh, man, that's because he's not the same after the car accident. He wanted him to prove himself multiple times before he fight him. Also, Crawford said the fight is going to happen when the money is right. And just to point out, you are correct. Errol Spence did say Crawford, he respects him tremendously. Unlike Keith Thurman, he said he don't respect Keith, but he respect Crawford. Errol Spence said a Crawford fight, we're going to go in the ring and try to kill each other. So, at the end of the day, when we do fight, we're going to try to kill each other. So he recognized Crawford like Crawford recognized him as one of his ultimate rivals at the end of the day, or at least the night. So, I don't think it's a question of Errol Spence is, he maneuvering around this fight. I think it's all about timing. And I think the money 60-40 split is no question. I mean, that's legit in my behalf. On the other hand, you got to also remember Top Rank contract with Crawford is nearly up. You got to remember that Al Heyman is sitting back looking like, man, I'm not about to do a 50-50 split with Top Rank, in which it's a dangerous fight for Errol Spence, like you said, right? Why would I do that when I could wait it out? I could wait till Crawford contract is up, which is less than a year. So the fight could still happen in 2021 on PBC alone if they sign Crawford once if he chooses to leave Top Rank. We all got to wait to see what Crawford decides to do, especially after Bob Arum is shitting on him. So it'd be unwise. But you got to remember, it'd be unwise for Al Heyman to make the fight happen next. If I'm Al Heyman, man, I will never make the fight happen next because I'm going to wait till Crawford leave Top Ranks. His contract is nearly up. So I could either buy him out of his contract or just sign him for the under PBC and then maybe create a tournament or make a mega fight and keep all the money in-house.
I mean, the thing is, it's just like, the reason why the 60-40 split is just like, it's not like I'm not 100% on it. It's simply for the fact that it'd be one thing. It's just like Crawford's the biggest name on ESPN. The numbers that he's putting, he's averaging, I think, like 1.5, 1.4 million views. And I'm looking at Errol Spence, and don't get me wrong, his numbers are great too, but they're kind of around the same number. And if we're looking at pay-per-view numbers, it does weigh against Crawford because his numbers are worse. But we also got to take into account the fact that the opposition that he fights, we always knew those numbers were never going to hit. Like we don't know what Terrence Crawford versus Sean Porter will put. We don't know what Terrence Crawford versus Mikey Garcia. We know Amir Khan and we know Victor Posto, and those weren't high demand fights for Crawford to have. So those fights didn't do very well.
That's why it matters when you fight name opponents. You get that A side leverage. That's what happens. Errol Spence put himself in position to be the A side, so we can't take that away from him. You know what I'm saying? And
no, I'm not. No, it's not about taking anything away from Errol Spence in that case, because, like you said, Errol Spence is just being smart. It's just at the same time, it's like it's not even that Crawford's playing dumb. It's just that Crawford's just getting the worst end of the stick because he's not getting any PBC fighters because they're trying to freeze him out.
Well, but
And
at the
the
same
thing
time,
is,
though, is Crawford, like, you see him, he thought being loyal to Top Rank was a good idea, and it backfired on him because he couldn't end up getting the big fight. We all know if he went to PBC from the jump, which his contract was expired, I think, like around 2-3 years ago. If he went to PBC from the jump, he would have most likely received all the big fights. Because remember, just like Crawford is the boogeyman, Errol Spence was also the boogeyman. Errol Spence now the cash cow because he ended up getting all the fights. So if Crawford made the same decision, he would have received the same, leverage when it came to receiving all the big fights. That would have helped him to get a bigger share against Errol Spence. But I don't think the 60-40 split is a big deal. I think that's a small hump that they could get over.
It's too soon.
Yeah, I think that's a small hump that they could get over. I don't think that's a big deal. I think the bigger deal right now is Top Rank situation with Crawford. I'm gonna tell you what hurts Crawford. I'm gonna tell you what hurts Crawford in negotiations. If Crawford chooses to stick with Top Rank, all Heyman got to do in negotiations, like, we want a 60-40 split because, I mean, Bob Arum, didn't you just say you're losing money on Crawford? Guess what? We're not losing money on Errol Spence no damn way. We making money off Errol Spence. We making banks. So that statement, regardless if it's false, because I know it's false. I'm about to prove to you guys that it's false. But before I do so, I just want to let you guys know that that statement hurt Crawford in the negotiations table with Errol Spence, because all they got to say, listen, you said that in public. You said that, you're losing money on Crawford. How you losing money? I mean, shit. You think you're the A side? How you losing money when you claim to be the A side, when you're this big of a name, but you losing money on him? So apparently he's not that big of a name. So that's further proof that Errol Spence is the A side, at least on the business level, because of Bob Arum mess ups. What didn't you say that?
I was real shocked. No, absolutely. I was real shocked that Bob Arum would say that. I'm gonna blame it on old age, because I can't imagine Bob Arum saying that a couple of years back, saying that he lost money off of Terrence Crawford, considering he's trying to make the big money. He's trying to get 50-50, and we all know once he said that, Errol Spence saw that like reply from Bob Arum and had a big smile on his face, because he's just like, man, if I didn't get 60-40, if I wasn't getting 60-40 then, I'm definitely getting it now.
Right. Yeah.
And the thing I see is just like, I want to see Crawford fight Spence now as a boxing fan, because I want to see those two fight in the prime. But at the same time, I know Crawford's not going to fight Errol Spence without getting the 50-50. So I guess the only best way of getting around that is either one, go to PBC, or two, fight Manny Pacquiao and make a huge pay-per-view fight, and then he could use that as his argument. But
right.
He's got both the belts that Spence won.
Right, and just keep that in mind what you said. But before I dive in, I want to dive into the next topic, because you pretty much touched on it. And yeah, I mean, the Pacquiao fight, for example, right? The Pacquiao fight and the Errol Spence fight. One thing for sure, and two things for certain: Crawford does not need Bob Arum to get those fights. So Crawford is looking at it like, damn, why the hell do I need to stick with Bob Arum if I don't need Bob Arum to make those fights? You usually need a promoter to get the big fights happen, to make the big fights happen. But if your promoter is doing anything and everything but to promote you by claiming that you're losing money on you, by making some ridiculous statements to the public, like he did to Floyd Mayweather when Floyd Mayweather tried to leave him, like he did to Mikey Garcia, like he did to so many different fighters, including Manny Pacquiao. He said Manny Pacquiao was washed, he was this and that, just because Pacquiao chose to leave, just like he did to Floyd and many more fighters. There's plenty of examples, but obviously, Crawford leaving Bob Arum is definitely an option. And Bob Arum said that I could give a shit about Crawford leaving and going elsewhere. Bob Arum said that he could give a shit about Crawford leaving him because he felt that Crawford betrayed him. So a lot of people don't really understand what's going on. So Bob Arum, from what I understood, reading all his comments and all his statements, he feels like Crawford betrayed him by leaking the information to the public to when his contract is going to be expired. He felt like that was a betrayal because now Bob Arum realized, damn, since Al Heyman know the expired date, he could wait it out and then sign Crawford to make all the money in-house. So instead of splitting 50-50 split with Top Rank and doing a joint promotion, he could keep all the money in-house. And even more so, if Crawford does pull off the upset, he got Crawford on his stable. So all the belts stay with PBC instead of heading elsewhere. So all the mega fights could still happen on PBC instead of happening elsewhere, right? It's a business decision. So Bob Arum is more upset of the fact that he felt like it was Crawford that leaked the information out. Crawford said, I never leaked anything out. I don't know how it got out to the public. Pretty much from what I understood, I heard the information first from, I think Bob Arum said it was Bomac who leaked out the information. Now, I don't know.
Yeah, I believe that.
But see, I don't know if it says on the contract you can't talk about when the contract going to be expired. I don't know if there's a term in the contract that prevent Crawford and his team from talking about when his contract is going to be expired, right? But it was Bob Arum who's coming out giving out false information, claiming that he signed Crawford till after the time he retired. So I don't know if on the contract itself you could tell lies and claim that the contract is forever. You know what I'm saying? So obviously, I think somebody from his team leaked out that the rematch, his contract is about to be expired. Crawford had an interview with Brian Custer in which Brian Custer asked him the $1 million question: "Are would Bob Arum? This is Bob Arum. He said that for Crawford to get the big fights, he might have to go to PBC. This is what Bob said on an interview. So Brian Custer used that portion of Bob interview and asked Crawford, would you do that? I mean, is that an option? Crawford said, absolutely. I mean, if Top Rank can't produce the big fights that I want, then I'm definitely looking elsewhere because it's all about business. Then Brian Custer followed up with a great question. I mean, when is the rematch? When is your contract expired? He said, in a few months, less than a year. So he was like, oh, so you considering to either stick with Top Rank if they give you the bag like they did to maybe Tyson Fury, or you considering leaving to PBC if Al Heyman chose to sign you because those where the big fights are, right? To make the legacy fights you want. He said, absolutely. It's all a business at the end of the day. So Bob Arum felt like that was a betrayal, but that's not a betrayal because it was Bob Arum that mistreated Crawford all these years, all this time. It was ESPN that kept putting Lomachenko as pound for pound number one. Kept erasing his losses during Crawford interviews. You know what I'm saying? Like the audacity. So they had Crawford all this time, the guy that's doing the most numbers on ESPN, but they rather promote Lomachenko more so. A guy that don't even speak English. We over here talking about Crawford is not promotable. Crawford doesn't promote himself enough. Man, Lomachenko doesn't even speak English.
Higher numbers.
Yeah, and he does higher numbers with less promotion than Lomachenko. And just to prove it to you, because a lot of people on my last video, I'm put in the comment section below. They kept telling me, the comparison you made was a little inaccurate because Canelo fights for DAZN and Canelo fought for HBO. Crawford fights for ESPN. So because of the subscription ratio, it's not as accurate. So, okay, if y'all don't like the Canelo comparison, I just wanted to compare him to who people say is the biggest name. So if this is what you guys want, all right, I'm going to compare him to a guy that fight on ESPN that got more money and he got signed for more money than Terrence Crawford did, right? So let's talk about the comparison between Terrence Crawford and Tyson Fury, two ESPN fighters, two top-ranked fighters, right? So if we talk about their purses, Crawford makes $3 to $4 million guaranteed per fight. Fury got paid against Wilder. He got $25 million plus. But we're not going to talk about that because that was a big fight. So let's talk about a fight on regular ESPN. which is Tom Schwartz. Tom Schwartz, Tyson Fury got paid $12 million. I'm gonna say it again. And for the people that didn't hear me the first time, for you guys to sink that in, Tyson Fury got paid $12 million. There were 4 documentaries done on Tyson Fury for that fight in particular. On the other hand, Crawford get paid $3 to $4 million. So Crawford, he pulls in the highest numbers on ESPN. He does 2.7 million viewership on ESPN. He did 2 million his last fight with zero to little promotion against Kell Brook. 2 million plus. He averaged 2 million plus against Kell Brook, and he only got paid $4 million for that fight. But mind you, Tyson Fury got paid $12 million against Tom Schwartz, and with heavy promotion, he only did $1 million. So one man get paid $12 million. He does $12 million. He does 1 million viewership. The other man does 2 to 3 million while getting paid $3 to $4 million. So, I mean, there's no comparison. Who is Bob Arum losing money on? And just to give you guys, worser ratio comparisons, Tyson Fury sold 5,000 tickets against Tom Schwartz. 5,000 tickets. On the other hand, Crawford, he sells 12,000 to 17,000 nearly every time he fights. When it comes to the tickets he sells in Omaha and New York, and it don't matter where he fights, he always do good numbers. He always sell more than 5K. I mean, Tyson Fury against Wallen, he did 3K. He sold 3,000 tickets. Ridiculous. But Bob Arum will come out and say that he's losing money on Terrence Crawford, the guy who's making him banks. On the other hand, he will say Tyson Fury is a superman. He the savior of the sport. When he lost all the money on Tyson Fury, I don't hear him say, oh, man, I'm losing so much money on Tyson Fury. He's not promotable. Regardless of what I do, I just can't sell the man. And after the man cheated, he didn't messed up his reputation because now I can't really sell him to the fans. I can't sell him to the public. But he will criticize Terrence Crawford. He will criticize Terrence Crawford, who making him banks, and criticize. He will criticize Crawford, who making him banks, and praise Tyson Fury, who got an $80 million contract with ESPN for like 3-4 fights. On the other hand, Crawford, he gets nowhere near that type of contract, even though he got so many mega fights on the horizon against guys like what's his name? I guess Errol Spence. Against anybody at the welterweight division is a big fight, right? I mean, the fight of the decade alone with Errol Spence should give him a contract like that, similar to Tyson Fury's. But just to show you how much they don't really appreciate Crawford, because he's a fight on the coincidental list. So what are we even talking about? Bob Arum over here keep, shitting on his own fighter instead of promoting him. But he obviously doing so because he realized he might lose Crawford to PBC. So he's like, you know what? I think he's too old to realize that he did this tactic too soon. Now that he did it, that kind of woke up Crawford like, damn, he ain't even loyal. You know what I'm saying? Like, man, he doing me like he did Floyd Mayweather. I'm telling you, this is like Floyd Mayweather 2.0. So what's your take on that comparison?
I mean, it just don't make no sense to me, simply for the fact that you got Crawford. Like, I was looking at Crawford's last couple fights against Kavalas, against Brook, in terms of numbers. And they shocked me, the amount of people that actually watch Crawford. And then I'm looking at Lomachenko's numbers, I'm looking at Tyson Fury's numbers, and those guys aren't competing against them. And the thing I'm also thinking about is you got Tyson Fury here, who has who's looked at before for potentially cheating, using drugs, and then you got him recently, as we've all seen, have something in his drugs or whatever in order to cheat and win against Deontay Wilder. You got Lomachenko here, who just lost to Teofimo Lopez, and even though he was a huge favorite in that fight, but you got Terrence Bud Crawford. While the whole boxing world is crumbling, this man is being extremely consistent on an 8 KO knockout streak. KO, right. Every single fight he has. And yet, this is the man you're the least loyal to when he's consistent, when he's legitimate, when he's giving you views, he's giving you wins. Because as we all know, the more you win, the more you get paid, because people want to see you fight. People don't want to see people who lose, like like Lomachenko, or people who cheat like Tyson Fury. That's why people are looking at Terrence Crawford and saying, I want to see him move against Spence. That's the fight that everybody wants to see. But you have Bob Arum saying that, oh, I'm losing money on him. I don't give a shit if I lose him. If he goes to PBC, it is what it is. I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, why is Terrence Crawford getting all this disrespect when you never said this about Lomachenko? When you never, even though he, like Lomachenko is not the best promoter, and you got Tyson Fury here, who has all these allegations and things and accusations against him. Like, why is it that the cleanest fighter you have, the best fighter you have, the arguably number one fighter in the world, you treat like shit? Like, I don't get that. And this man,
and you brought up a great point.
Gives you the most respect.
Yeah, and you brought up a great point. Crawford produced in the ring with his results. Man, his last fight, he scored a viral knockout that was trending on YouTube and on Twitter and everywhere. So it's like this man produced not just to his pound for pound status, but even in the ring, as far as, you know, always coming off with a knockout victory. And he ain't just pound for pound number one. He's pound for pound one of the hardest punchers in the world. So instead of Bob Arum like praising the man, like, damn, man, this man's shocking me every time, he produced in the ring just as much as he produced on ESPN when it comes to the viewership. So I don't understand for the people that keep saying, oh, that's just ESPN. ESPN got this, they got that many subscription. Well, how come Tyson Fury only did 1 million with all that heavy promotion? They did 4 documentaries on him, and he only did 1 million. Why? Why is Crawford doing the highest numbers on ESPN? Why is he doing more numbers than Lomachenko? Because at the end of the day, real recognize real. People want to see the real talent, which is Crawford, and Bob Arum want to shit on him instead. He treating Crawford like he treated Rigondeaux, like he treated Floyd, like he treated Pacquiao. Once Pacquiao chose to leave him, once Floyd chose to leave him, and we see this pairing. Oscar De La Hoya did it, Floyd did it, Mikey did it, Ruiz did it, and now Crawford, looking to do the same. So that's what I mean. It's like, I think Bob Arum is getting too old to realize that he's saying some outrageous stuff. And in the social media era, in which whatever you say, it could be used against you, nearly like it is in the court of law, because, at the end of the day, the worst weapon in the world is a microphone and a camera. And Bob Arum is saying some crazy shit right now. Excuse my language. Yeah. So, that's definitely not helping his case.
Being real about it.
Yeah, he's really hitting her in his case, because he said Bob Arum had me bugging, man. He said, man, listen, I don't care about Crawford. After the Errol Spence fight, he could leave to PBC after he beat Errol Spence. It's like, man, you think Al Heyman, the smartest boxing businessman in the game, is gonna make the fight happen now after he hearing your drama? Criticizing Crawford on that on in front of the whole world, and is public news, it's public knowledge at this point that Crawford contract is nearly up. So if I know it, if I put 1 and 1 and 2 together, you think Al Heyman is not going to be able to put 1 million and 2 million together and make the PBC, make Errol Spence versus Crawford happen on PBC alone to keep all the money in-house? Bob Arum saying some crazy shit. It's like, bro, I know you know better. But like I said, I think Crawford is.
I'll give you even a better example.
What's that?
The thing is, Bob Arum always talking about Tyson Fury as a Superman. He's this. What people don't remember is that before that fight even happened with Deontay Wilder, even though that was a big fight, what people don't remember is that Bob Arum was like, "Oh, these numbers are going to reach Pacquiao Mayweather numbers." And when that people thought that was outrageous, he said, "Oh, this is going to at least hit 2 million." And when that didn't happen, he said it at least has to hit 1.2 million. Yeah. And it barely reached that margin. Right. So and everybody and I heard that fight lost money. The biggest fight, one of the biggest fights in 2020. That fight, I heard that fight lost money. So I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, this is the biggest fight this man had. You promoted the living crap out of this fight, and yet I'm hearing that Terrence Crawford's losing you money when you just lost money on a huge pay-per-view that you spent millions in order to create. Yet everybody is shouting Spence versus Crawford.
Yep. Great point.
That doesn't make any sense.
Great point, because Bob Arum was banking on making his money back from the Wilder fight because he lost money on the fights prior to that, from the Wilder fight to the Tom Schwartz fight. Remember, he had to give tickets away. You know, he gave thousands of tickets away. Tyson Fury did poor numbers on ESPN, so he definitely lost money on that fight. You know, paying Tyson Fury $12 million for the Tom Schwartz fight when he pulled in, you know, poor numbers. So that being said, he was banking on making his money back from the Wilder fight. And then when that didn't happen, I know now he like, shit, I got to make my money back from the trilogy fight. But then Tyson Fury trying to fight Kabali instead. It's like, how you going to make your money back off Kabali? You're going to lose more money off Kabali than make your money, because the Wilder fight definitely going to do some serious numbers now after all these allegations. But a Kabali fight is going to do no numbers at all. I mean, people already kind of, you know, really tight with that Wilder situation alone that we can't get a trilogy. But that's just to show you the double standards and the contradictions. You know, every time, I mean, it's like every other breath is a contradiction by Bob Arum. You know what I mean? So that being said, any last thought you want to give before I let you go, my brother?
I mean, this is just my personal opinion about the Crawford Spence fight, because that's what I just came to talk about. I just think, I just hope this what happens with Crawford, like what's going on with Crawford and Spence. I hope it doesn't prolong to what happened with Pacquiao and Mayweather, to the point where that fight's just years old and one of them loses. I hope they can fight when they're both undefeated, they're both alpha pound fighters, arguably number one and number two, because no fight's more demanded by the box than the real boxing against this, because nobody knows who's going to win this fight. My favorite is Crawford, but I can see Spence winning. I can see Crawford winning. That's why this fight has to be made. Yeah. We haven't seen a 50-50 fight like this in a lot of years. So
it's definitely it. This is the fight of the decade. Yep, it got to happen, and it got to happen sooner than later. 2021 for sure. So
and they both need it.
Yeah, they both need it. It's going to be a hell of a fight, and I hope they fight each other more than once. You know what I'm saying? If it's a close fight, and, you know, why not see it again? You know, this is a fight. They need to have a trilogy, as far as I know. Fight one time at 147, twice at 147, if if it's possible, and maybe one time at 154. Why not? So I think they should definitely do that, you know, because this is the type of fight we're talking about. Stylistically, I can't even really predict what's going to happen, because Crawford switched stands, Errol Spence, he got all the attributes. So, you know, ain't no telling. But great talking with you, Joey. You know, make sure you call in after the fight, because I am doing I'm going live after the fight with Errol Spence and Danny Garcia.
I got you, my man.
All right, for sure. Peace. So yeah, make sure you guys call in after the fight between Errol Spence and Danny Garcia, because that's going to be the fight of the week. I mean, shit, the fight of the year for me, because I got that much love for Errol Spence. He's one of my favorite fighters. So I want to talk about this topic in particular, because, you know, Mike Tyson responded to a Floyd Mayweather question. A reporter asked Mike Tyson, "What's your take on Floyd Mayweather coming out claiming there's too many belts in boxing?" But see, you got to peep game. They asked Mike Tyson and Roy what Mayweather said while leaving out the main point of his comment or his statement, which is there's too many belts as far as the franchise belt, the witness protection belt, the French fries belt, and the super belts. That's what Floyd Mayweather is complaining about, not the regular 4 organizations. That's always been there before Floyd Mayweather even came to the game. Floyd Mayweather, his main complaint, he was speaking out for the fans that kept criticizing all these organizations, such as the WBC and the WBA, for creating super belts, regular belts, witness protection belts, so on and so forth. We know the agenda behind these belts by the WBC, the World Boxing Corruption Organization, in which that's what Floyd Mayweather was referring to. But they will ask Roy Jones or Mike Tyson what Floyd Mayweather said while leaving out the main point of his statement, right? And then Roy and Mike Tyson obviously responded by saying, listen, Roy and Mike Tyson said pretty much the same thing. It's a good thing that there's a lot of belts in boxing because that's how a lot of people get paid. The organization get paid, the fighters get paid. There's more money, there's more food on the table for people to eat, from the fighters to the organizations. So it's like, you are correct. I mean, Bill Haney even brought that point. I asked him the same questions, and he said that he don't feel like there's too many belts in boxing because at the end of the day, it's a business. So instead of having one belt, there's 4 belts. So you could promote 4 fighters and make money off 4 fighters than just 1 fighter. However, like I said before, Roy, he pointed out that as long the best fight the best. Both Mike and Roy agreed, as long once you get a belt, you want to unify with all the other champions. The main goal is becoming undisputed. You be like, man, forget everybody else. I want to get every single belt in the division. If you feel like you're the best, you're going to get every single belt. If you don't feel like you're the best, then you are not going to unify with every single fighter. If you leave a particular fighter out, then you truly don't feel like you're the best. Mike Tyson co-signed that. And that's what Floyd Mayweather is saying. Like, they all on the same page. Floyd is saying there are too many belts that's stopping fighters from becoming undisputed, from unifying, because they could maneuver. These belts are made for witness protection, literally. The French fries belt, you could purchase a belt, literally. You could purchase a belt, like you go to Walmart and purchase a belt to keep your pants up. You could purchase the belt from the WBC. You could request the French fries belt to avoid mandatories. That's what the French fries belt is a witness protection belt, right? So that's what Floyd Mayweather is pointing out. Like, man, these organizations is getting crazy right now. Like, Floyd is pointing out what the fans are complaining about, which is in the pros, there are as many belts there are in the amateurs. Floyd is like, man, this ain't the amateurs. Why are there so many different belts? Like, I understand. I mean, like I said, Bill Haney even brought this point up. It's good to have the interim belt. It's good to have this belt, like the state belt, if you want to call it that. You like the champion of the state. You're the champion of the country, which is the interim or the national belt. And then the interim belt, which is you're the champion or the mandatory of the real champion, the regular champion, right? But then they came up with super champion, a French fries champion, a witness protection champion. That's where the issue came in, because the other belts don't really matter. The interim title belt, the national belt, those are motivational belts. That's how I look at it. Like, at the end of the day, it's like, remember when you go to school, you graduate, you get a certificate, and because you received higher grades than other students, that's like a motivational thing for your hard work. That's how I look at it to fighters as well. Like, man, a lot of fighters get out of the mud. A lot of fighters, once you become maybe the best fighter in your country, yeah, nothing wrong with receiving a belt that's called the national belt. There's nothing wrong with that. But when we have multiple international belts, world title belts under the same organization, we're not talking about the WBA, the WBC, the IBF, the WBO. It's okay to have 4 different belts. That's not what Floyd Mayweather is complaining about. What Floyd Mayweather is complaining about and focusing on is per organization, they have different world titles. The WBA has a regular title. The WBA also have a super title. The WBC had a regular title, which is the world title that they recognize as the real title, but they also got the French fries title, the witness protection title that they came up with recently, in which they said you can't win it nor lose it. But like, they changed in the rules. They bend and curved the rules to these fighters on the hope list like every other day. At first, they told Charlo and Devin Haney they can't fight for this franchise belt. You can't win it because it's not transferable. So it's not going to transfer to you. And then when Lopez fights Lomachenko, they tell Lopez you could petition for the belt. Hold on. Charlo said the same thing. He said he wanted to fight Canelo for the belt. Why couldn't you guys say that he could petition for the belt? They told Charlo, listen, you can never fight for this French fries belt. So you could see the contradictions. And now they changed the rules to the French fries belt is like a mandatory for the regular title to activate it at any time, because obviously the rules say per organization, they only could choose one belt to be the face of that organization. So the IBF got the regular IBF belt, the WBO got the regular WBO belt. The WBA title, they chose the super title as the title that's the face of the organization. The WBC chose the regular title to be the face of their organization. But why create other titles in between? To frustrate the fans. But again, those are witness protection tactics. So fighters on the hope list could maneuver around fighters on the coincidental list. It ain't a coincidence that we only have 2 franchise champions, or we had 2 franchise champions, which is Lomachenko and Canelo Alvarez, in order to avoid 2 fighters on the coincidental list that happen to be their mandatories. They fought to be the mandatory. They fought their way to that position. Now Teofimo doing the same thing, maneuvering around Devin Haney. He went from the takeover to taking parts. He's Teofimo taking parts for now. Lopez taking over later, maybe. So that being said, when Teo, for example, he looking crazy out here trying to explain himself, because now the takeover is looking like he was taking over the city, New York. He wasn't talking about taking over the world, right? So that's what Floyd Mayweather was pointing out, that the corruption in the sport of boxing is super real and it's hurting the sport. At the end of the day, they all on the same page. Roy, Mike, Floyd, they all on the same page, but they have them going at each other. You know what I mean? When it's like, why y'all turning these fighters against each other when they all saying the same thing? That's like me asking a room, what is 4 + 4? Everybody yell out 8. But everybody yelling at each other. I got the right answer. I got the right answer. Man, you all got the right answer, man. At the end of the day, that's what we talking about. But they phrased the question in a way so Mike and Roy could criticize Floyd when Floyd is speaking out for the fans, and he pretty much made the same statement as Roy and Mike did. But the whole purpose of the franchise belt, of the super belt, and all these other extra belts is to maneuver around the fighters on the coincidental list and not fight the best. That's the whole purpose of it. It's okay to have 4 different titles as long they all fight each other, so we could have one face, one name in the sport. That's why I hope PBC sooner or later creates a PBC belt in order to make one face, one name per division. They could become the UFC in the sport of boxing. PBC could become the UFC of boxing. All they got to do is make a tournament if they are able to get Crawford over and make it for undisputed, for all belts, and then give the winner not Ali Trophy. You could give him Ali Trophy as well. Obviously, that's the highest of all trophies, but you could also give him the PBC belt that represent undisputed. That will change the game. That will be a game changer, because now we could recognize one face as one champion. I mean, it's even confusing for hardcore boxing fans to keep up with all these champions. I talked to some hardcore boxing fans, and they really frustrated and confused when it comes to the lightweight division and the status that's going on over there. They like, why the hell Teofimo holding 5 belts when he's only a unified champion, when Devin Haney is the WBC champion? Teofimo is holding the WBC belt. One of them got a top-ranked logo on it. The other one got a French fries belt on it. And Teo said this is the real belt that got top-ranked logo on it, a duplicate belt. You can't make it up. You cannot make it up. So that being said, I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Before I let you guys go, I want you guys in the comment section, go ahead, drop who you guys picking to win, because nobody called in to pick Danny Garcia. I saw a couple of people in the chat claiming that they are picking Danny Garcia. So who are you guys picking to win? Danny Garcia or Errol Spence? And how? How are you guys picking the fighter to win? By KO, by decision? Go ahead, put it in the comment section. But yeah, like I said, you know, as far as all these additional titles, the purpose of all these additional titles is that these fighters is for fighters to, you know, help them avoid a maneuver. And that's what Floyd Mayweather is pointing out, is that, listen, it's too much corruption. Just keep it what it is. Don't do more than 4. That's already bad enough. You know what I mean? UFC got 1 belt to represent the sport. You had the guy, Justin, who fought Khabib. When he beat Tony for that UFC UFC title of Tony, what did he do to that title? He threw the belt away. Justin was like, man, I don't want no freaking interim title. I don't care if Tony was the champion before Khabib was, and Tony didn't lose to Khabib. So he pretty much was still a champion in people's eyes because he was undefeated. Justin didn't care about that. He ain't on no TO shit. He was like, man, give me the real strap. I want Khabib's strap. That's how fighters in the sport of boxing need to represent the sport. Not get a duplicate belt and claim they the champion. Not get an interim belt and treat them and act like they're the real champion. As far as I know, when it comes to TO, he a unified champion. But as far as the WBC champion, TO is no more than WBC champion than Ryan Garcia. They both on the same status. They pretty much interim title holders for Devin Haney. Israel, I got Garcia winning by knockout. Okay. Man, I wish you called in, Israel. We didn't even have a Danny Garcia pick on the call. Luke Garcia Spence by knockout in the 7th round. That's what Angel Garcia predicted the other way around. Morris Spence by unanimous decision. So cool 1, I got Spence by unanimous decision or stoppage. Bruh, EJ late KO. Oh, we got Manny Pacquiao. I got Errol Spence Jr., but God bless the both fighters. Man, this is Pacquiao talking for real, the way he sounded. Talking about God bless both fighters. Inshallah, they both nice and safe. But Manny, you need to hop in the ring right after. Jones, Spence with a stoppage in the 10th round. Okay, that's a big statement, my brother. Mitchell off 7, EJ stoppage. Omar Z, Errol by major decision. Okay, nobody got it by split decision. Nobody want to represent the show. You, Sergi, 1, 2, 3. If Danny wins, it will be by KO. William Garcia by KO. Sony Garcia by split decision. Okay, somebody is representing the show. Smith Spence in the 10th round. Justin Spence by major decision. 97 Spence by unanimous decision. Yes, sir. So I see you guys. Mob the 1, Garcia by KO. So I'm seeing more Spence, but I do see a couple not Pacquiao's. I see a couple Danny Garcia. So it's gonna be a hell of a fight for sure. I appreciate everybody that's tuning in. Make sure you guys do attend the live after the fight. Subscribe below if you're trying to get smart about it, man. If you're trying to get dumb about a second, don't listen to these decafs, the dumb casual ass fans that don't know shit about boxing. Word to Roger Hayward, may he rest in peace, inshallah. And shout out to the entrepreneur of new media that I'm a part of, Dante, my broski, my AKHi, the entrepreneur of new media. New media agenda is the whole absolute truth every single time. And you already know what time it is. AKHi always put the whole absolute truth together like puzzle. Join me Saturday night after the Danny Garcia versus Errol Spence fight. We're going live to talk about the fight and many more things. So make sure you subscribe. More importantly, click on the notification bell to get notified time I post or go live. Excuse me. Alhamdulillah. Or go live on Split Decision. It's a boxing debate / talk show, mixed, master, engineer, produced by yours truly, AKHi, the past, present, and future undisputed pound for pound when it comes to debate. I got these decafs shook. They scared to look every time AKHi's on TV because the truth is always bad news for these decafs. Is the decaf's kryptonite. That's why we haven't had a decaf calling in a while now. You know what I mean? So that being said, I appreciate all my AKHis that's tuning in, that's calling in, that's always supporting, that's always sharing my videos, that's always throwing the super chats. I'm humbled by all the love and support. And with that being said, make sure you guys join me next Saturday night, this Saturday night, after the fight. Good luck to Errol Spence. Good luck to Danny Garcia. It's going to be a hell of a fight, a hell of a war. And there's only one truth. So I got Errol Spence all day. With that being said, appreciate everybody for tuning in. Manny Pacquiao, Davis, Zartu, Ba, Al. So alaikum assalam, brother. Israel. Shout out to Israel. I appreciate you for this live. I appreciate you too, my brother. I wish you called in, my man. My guy, you know what I mean? We missed Jay Lee's today, man. Where you at, man? Hopefully you call in after the fight. Luke Garcia, Maurice, William, Spence by unanimous decision. Yeah, shout out to everybody that's tuning in on the late night edition show. Appreciate it to everybody, and to be continued on the next episode of AKHi TV. Peace, and we out here.